Waggle your joysticks daily. All this and more coming up on This Week in Retro.
High-resolution color graphics.
This land of high technology.
The revolution in technology that made the information age possible.
Those kids are not afraid of computers.
From tiny acorns.
Celebrity gaming.
And you're a wizard now, Wizardry.
All these stories and more coming up on today's show.
Up-to-date news for out-of-date tech.
Hello, Dave. Welcome to This Week in Retro, episode 174. We should start thinking about 200 soon, shouldn't we?
Yeah, I did you know that I noticed recently I've been on this for 2 years.
Really? Is that today or just recently?
I don't think today. I just think in general I've been here now over 2 years.
Oh, part of the furniture now.
I know. It's been this show has been longer with me than it has been without me.
True. Yeah. Well, that's nice. You've settled into it very well, Dave. I think you've passed your probation period.
I was going to say, is it time to say I've officially passed the trial?
You are officially part of the show.
I get to stay.
How's your week been? I understand you've spent most of the week trying to drill a hole in a wall.
Yes. I have portable air conditioning units, and I wanted to get them. They're made for windows that slide open. Mm-hmm. Like British windows don't. So I've been taking this massive core drill through the wall, and it turns out I have this ridiculously tough brick. So it takes an enormous amount of effort to get through. So I finally made it through yesterday with this massive big SDS drill. And it makes you sore holding it for 45 minutes to get through. You end up so sore from it. But anyway, I made it through, so I'm delighted with that. Haven't really done anything on the pinball. I've got lots of learning to do in the pinball. Yeah, I need to learn about this Pinscape device. So this is a device that connects to all they're called toys. I think
toys is that the term used
that's
by the
term
community?
Used, yeah. So mechanical toys. So I'll need to learn about that and then get that done. But there's all sorts of stuff happening here in the garden, landscaping and all the rest of it. So I haven't had a minute. I've been super busy.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. So yesterday we had the patron day at the cave, which was our biggest one yet. Normally I restrict it to 30 because of fire regs. We went to 42 this time because we opened up the whole mill so people could flow around all the rooms and we didn't breach any regs. Arcade, cave, all the rest of it. Beautiful sunny day. So we had a picnic outside for our lunch and just lovely people. Quite a few people from the little Red Arrow YouTubers Club, as they call themselves. They had a little group meet of about 15 of them came along, which was lovely to see them.
But big Red Arrow, they call themselves, not little. Big
Red Arrow. Sorry, not little. I've belittled them. The Big Red Arrow Club, as they call themselves. So that was nice to have them there. Lee Smith was there from Lee Smith's workshop, bought a beautiful 3D printed Amiga 500 prototype. So this is a conversation I had with him way back where the prototype documents for the A500 came up. It looks like a completely different machine to the one we got. So we worked to, I say we worked. Lee designed and 3D printed this prototype. So it's a real nice conversation piece to have in the museum. And I'll make a video about that soon. We can talk about the design choices on the 500. I got wind that there was going to be a lot of swapping and trading. Mm-hmm. So I put out some tables in the car park for them so they didn't have to lug everything up the stairs. And car boots were open. Things were swapped. There was a lot of swapping going on. Car park was absolutely rammed. And a few things were donated to me as well, including a joystick called the Terminator. Have you seen this? It's for 8-bit micros.
Is this the weird shaped one that I've seen the alien one?
There is the Terminator head joystick, but it's not that one.
No, I haven't seen it. No,
it's a grenade. It's a metal grenade with a little stick on the top, which is the joystick, and then the clip that comes around the grenade is the fire button. So it looks just like a grenade. I'm glad the chap who donated it didn't get pulled over on his way. That's my donation. Really nice. It does actually work okay, I have to say.
Okay.
So that was interesting. But all in all, just a really, really lovely day at the cave. So it was great to see everyone. We had a BMX display. We had a rally burner, a chopper, a Vector and a Wildcat, nicely displayed on stands by a local chap who refurbs them. So that was nice to bring something not computery, but still retro into the day, something different to look at. Yeah, just a nice day, but I am exhausted now. So tomorrow I go on holiday for 4 days. So that's nice.
Are you going anywhere nice?
I'm going to a lodge, a cabin in the Forest of Dean, next to a brewery with a hot tub. So that's me, switched off 4 days.
Yeah, you'll enjoy that. You'll enjoy that. I'm not on a holiday, but I'm looking forward to, hopefully this week, the catio getting installed, and then I'll be able to sit out the back in the sunshine, because we're having nice weather now.
Yeah, and you can take your aircon unit out with you and pump it back into the house through the hole.
Yeah, that's not how I'll do it. No. Shall we get on with things, Neil? A lot to do today.
Because I think we're both working through tiredness and we're going to quickly talk nonsense. So let's get on topic.
On topic. Back when I was small and Neil was even smaller, the UK decided that it needed a computer literacy project. It's a story I'm sure most of you will have heard of, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here. But it consisted of television programs, a new microcomputer from Acorn Computers Limited of Cambridge, and many other things. It was an immense success, and I think it's very likely that's why the UK leaned so heavily into micros and not consoles in the 80s.
Yeah, many things, including school curriculums. So it was pumped into our schools, whether we liked it or not.
We liked it though, didn't we?
We liked it, but I'm sure there were some that weren't into it.
Yes. The computer, of course, was the BBC Micro. That's where it came from. A very capable machine based around the 6502. It was a very robust design, durable enough to survive the sticky fingers of school children, although there was a push-out ROM access patch that sadly got pushed out by their grotty digits more often than not. It had a wealth of expansion capabilities. That was part of the design of it. And it was ideal for schools, but it really was quite expensive. And while some people did have them at home, it was a long way from what ended up being most successful in the UK, the ZX Spectrum, at a fraction of the cost in terms of price. The BBC Micro was dear. To try and close this gap, Acorn developed a similar machine called the Electron. Now, the Electron was very much a cost-down version of the BBC Micro. However, it was not fully compatible. You couldn't put BBC software into an Electron and expect it to work. Some did, but almost all of it didn't. It wasn't too difficult to port games from one to the other, but you would have to make changes. It did still run BBC Basic though, so if you had any familiarity with the BBC at all, then it would help you with the Electron or the ELK as it was known. It would feel like kind of the same thing to you.
And it was a good version of Basic, very good Basic.
Yeah, that's why the Acorn uses BBC Basic, doesn't it?
It does. Yep.
Nonetheless, the Electron is a very capable little machine, and although it wasn't a commercial success, it also wasn't a complete failure, and lots of people had it as their first micro and remember it fondly. Now, something that Acorn did as part of the cost reduction, and in fact the whole premise of the Electron was the cost reduction, and it was to consolidate many of the individual chips into one custom unit. Now, on the Acorn, this is known as the ULA, the Uncommitted Logic Array. On other machines like the Amstrad GX4000, a similar device was the ASIC. The key thing with these things, though, was consolidating of lots of different chips into one single chip so that you don't need as big a circuit board, as many solder joints, and most importantly, you can replace lots of chips with a single one. It greatly reduced costs.
Also found, or of course not the same chip, but a ULA found in the ZX Spectrum.
Yes.
A famously very low-cost micro.
Yes, the ZX Spectrum had a ULA, and that has been subsequently kind of expanded out where you can replace it completely with discrete logic and things like Dawn Superflows boards and the Harlequin and all the rest of it. As it turned out, though, for the Electron, this was a bit of a double-edged sword because they couldn't get the ULA ready in time. This delayed the micro coming to market, and I think it's widely accepted that this is a big part of the reason why it didn't catch on quite as well as it might have. If it had been out the year before, then perhaps it might have embedded itself better than it did. The ULA itself, though, was a big feat of engineering at the time, so it was a success to even get it done, but the delay was a big cost. But it's also what we're going to be talking about today.
It was a Ferranti manufactured ULA, wasn't it? I think they were the guys knocking the chips out back then. Yeah.
The advantage of having one chip instead of dozens turns into a huge disadvantage when something goes wrong. It's easy to replace a logic chip on a faulty machine. Even if it's not socketed, then it's pretty trivial to desolder a little logic chip. Custom chips, on the other hand, well, chips that are unique to that computer, are still reasonably easy to change. And although they're more expensive and more difficult to find, at least when one custom chip fails out of 4 or 5 or 6 on a board, the ones that are remaining can be used for spare parts. The problem with the Electron is that almost everything is in the ULA, so if something does go wrong, and usually it is the ULA, then the whole Electron is not much use, and you can't use it for spare parts because it's such a common failure point that any other Electron that needs something would also need the ULA. And that's what's changed. Thanks to a submission from D'Angelis, I now know about a replacement. Lee of More Fun Making It has a video showing it off and interviewing the creator, Chris from Jamsoft, who has combined people's other work into his own project, the Jamsoft Electron ULA. And this is a drop-in replacement for the rather large ULA on the Electron, and with it, an Electron can be brought back to life. And Lee explains all this and then goes on to replace it, which isn't terribly easy because it's not just a normal chip on the Electron.
Yeah, speaking of Chris from, was it Jamsoft? He was at the cave yesterday. Yeah. He was at the cave. So was Lee from More Fun Making It. And so was D'Angelis, who submitted this story. So we had the whole gang at the cave yesterday, and it was nice to chat. It feels
a little bit incestuous now, doesn't it? I didn't know that.
Yeah, they were all there. And he had his ULAs, and he had some Electron boards open with the ULA on just to show people his work, and generated a lot of discussion. Yeah, lots of people were interested in his work. Lovely guy. Yeah, the Electron in general, released in 83. I think the original goal was Christmas of 82, so it missed that. And Christmas of 82 was the first Christmas the ZX Spectrum was available at Christmas time. It came earlier in the year. So that would have been a really interesting battle to see, the low-cost Acorn versus the low-cost Sinclair at Christmas. Didn't happen. Sinclair cleaned up. But I would have liked to see that alternative history. Compared to the BBC Micro, the thing that most people raised, I thought you were going to raise this when you were chatting earlier, was that the cost reductions and the design choices to get this down in price resulted in the machine running at 2 megahertz like the BBC Micro, but it would have to drop to 1 megahertz when accessing the RAM. And this is often quoted as a bottleneck of the ELK. But you get what you pay for. So it was £199 at launch. BBC Micro was £399, and the ELK would drop to £129 in time. So for that price, and unlike the Speccy, it had a decent keyboard. It had a really good keyboard, actually. Really nice to type on. It was the ideal low-cost, had BBC Basic, so really lovely machine to learn programming on. Yeah, if you wanted the latest and greatest games, it had games. It had Elite. It had, ports of most of the popular games. It wasn't the best games machine in the world, but then nor was the ZX Spectrum. It was just the popularity of the ZX Spectrum meant it was fudged in every single way possible to get every last drop out of that machine as a gaming machine. And like I said, if it came out Christmas 82, I think we would have seen a lot more of the ELK. The ULA project in particular, really great. It's important in the preservation of the system because, like you say, it becomes a brick if the ULA doesn't work. If I remember correctly, some of the ELKs were socketed, the ULA, and some of them were soldered to the board. do you need specifically to have a socketed one or the skills to install a socket if you want to use this thing? Presumably the old ULA comes off and it doesn't just clip on top.
I think this is difficult to install unless it's socketed. I think that's the way it is. I think it's possible for both, but I think it's difficult to install unless it's socketed. It's not impossible. It's just not. I wouldn't think someone would want to do this as a very first project with a desoldering moo gun.
But socketed, pop it out, pop the new one in, job done. And I know for a fact that I've got some unhappy electrons floating around in my storeroom, so this could breathe new life into them, which is fantastic. My mind was wandering to Ferranti earlier because have you ever seen The Ghost of Ferranti?
No.
Look it up, everyone. The Ghost of Ferranti. It's a 1980s sort of mini documentary, and it's a trip to the Ferranti factory in the 80s, just outside Manchester they were based. And the Ghost of Ferranti, who was alive in the 1800s, is walking around the factory looking at all the new technology developments and going, oh, this is amazing. The Ghost of Ferranti.
Fair enough. I think even if it did come out at that Christmas in 82, it would not have outsold or beaten the Spectrum, but it might have embedded itself with a smaller market share than the Spectrum, but a more significant one than it did get. And that might have made all the difference for it. It's a nice machine. The thing about the 1 megahertz thing with accessing the RAM, that's a problem with it, but there's lots of problems with lots of different machines. It's not. It's. I'm not saying it's a reason not to have bought one back in the day. And if you really wanted, you could buy a 32K RAM board to go with it, which ran at full speed and gave you more RAM because that RAM was shared with the video memory on the Electron. It was a low-cost computer, but it did what it did very well. Yeah. And actually, I think it was good enough in 99% of cases to have been the machine in your school. I mean, how many of us actually used all the capabilities, I know.
all the expansions of the BBC Micro? Very few.
You could argue that the BBC Micro was a bit Homer Simpson's car. It was a bit too much. And they ended up with buying a machine that did lots of things in circumstances where they weren't really used. I mean, even the logo turtle thing, did that really need all the stuff the BBC Micro did? No, I don't think so. As for the end result, well, I won't spoil it for you. Lee does it with his usual charm and deadpan humour, so have a look at the video. But the most important thing is here, another computer joins the ranks of things like the Spectrum, the Commodore 64, and if not already, then soon the Amiga, where you can replace all of the chips as they die.
Where it can never die.
Yes, it can never die, Neil.
No, it is immortal.
Or it can be brought back like Frankenstein's monster.
Dave, I was visiting pixel.addict.media and I was asking myself the question, when did gaming get serious? Do you know how I could find out the answer to that question? I
think you would have to read the magazine, Neil, because it's their cover story.
Is it? Issue 20 of Pixel Addict magazine?
Yeah.
At just £6.99?
Yeah. Talking about interviewing people like Sean Southern and Andrew Morris and Terry Lloyd about what happened with gaming as it turned from trivial little games into more serious and more thoughtful and sometimes some unpleasant topics. If you think about Roberta Williams, they interviewed, some of her later games were quite grim.
Mm-hmm. Phantasmagoria.
Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of.
Also on the cover, they mentioned the TurboGrafx 16. They've got stories on that. Now, as I'm speaking to you now, Dave, there is a TurboGrafx 16 sat in reception waiting for me at the mill. And I'm so excited for it. It was sent in by Scott. Thank you, Scott. Boxed as new. And one of my biggest retro regrets is selling a boxed as new TurboGrafx 16 back in 2010. I've got a little video of it on YouTube in my private videos to remind me of it, and never thought I'd see one again. And I've got the exact same setup again.
Would that be the very bottom of the market time to sell it at 2010? Would that be the very worst time to sell it?
No, there was a scene, and I think it got decent money. Yeah,
okay.
Probably more now, but It's not super rare and it's not super in demand. So
fair enough.
Yeah. So it's nice to have that. And I will look forward to reading the Pixel Addict article on that, as well as articles on Doctor Who, couch co-op gaming, and the 400 Mini. I won't open up the can of worms that is the new series of Doctor Who, Dave, because we won't stop talking about that or stop getting comments about it. It's a bit Marmite.
Then we got a copyright strike.
But do please go to pixel.addict.media, and we thank them for supporting this show.
Thank you very much, Pixel Addict.
My chosen story this week, Dave, is more of a conversation starter than a story itself. It was shared by Battle Pratt on our subreddit, reddit.com/r/this week in retro, which is the place to go if you see an interesting story with even the most tenuous of retro links. Please post that link to our subreddit so that we can consider it for our stories. It's an interview with British athlete Daley Thompson. Now, he was a gold medal winner in the 80 and 84 Olympics in the decathlon, specifically. Unbeaten for 9 years, apparently. A real superstar. I think we all remember Daley Thompson as being a real sort of playground superstar. He was a winner. He was all-round nice guy, wasn't he? And if you had an 8-bit micro in the 80s, well, he was something else as well, because Thompson put his name to 3 video games published by Ocean Software. Daley Thompson's Decathlon in 84, which I had on the Amstrad. Did you have this one? Everyone had it who had an 8-bit micro, didn't they? Daley Thompson's Super Test in 85. I didn't get that one. A friend had it, but I didn't have it. And Daley Thompson's Olympic Challenge in 88, which was, that one also made it onto the 16-bit platforms as well as the 8-bits. There's Dave waggling his joystick. That is the sound of playing Daley Thompson. Now, back then, 84, celebrity endorsement, it wasn't really a thing within the growing video game market. But this really worked for Thompson. In the interview that's linked, it's about 13 minutes in, he says that he had nothing to do towards it, didn't have to do anything, didn't have to do, of course, motion capture wasn't really a thing for video games then, didn't have to do any of that. His agent struck a deal with Ocean and Thompson simply got paid. That's pretty much his involvement in it. He says it did well for him. But of course, he also says if he'd done it in the modern day, it would have done a lot better for him because this was just, new ground. He also says that people still mention the game to him on a daily basis. Daily basis. Get it? Yes. But actually on a daily basis. And that his stock answer really is, no, I will not buy you a new joystick. He gets asked that all the time, owing to the game's joystick waggling nature that broke all but the toughest of sticks. It was, of course, in essence, a track and field inspired / ripped off game. It was track and field. And it did well. It did really well, in fact. But it got me thinking about other games with celebrity endorsements. And I invite our audience to share their memories too of celebrity endorsed games. I think this is going to be our question of the week, so get thinking. According to Wikipedia, Daley Thompson is the earliest example of a game featuring a celebrity in the title, and I'm not taking that as a given because
I don't believe it.
I don't believe it. There must have been others in the 13 years preceding Daley Thompson's Decathlon, going back to computer space in the arcades on the home computers. There must be. And it would be interesting to know what it is. What is the earliest game with a celebrity in the title?
Oh, I know that. It's Daley Thompson's Decathlon.
Have you been on Wikipedia, Dave? There must be an earlier one. But yeah, sharing some of my memories. Obviously, Daley Thompson, the joystick waggler, enjoyed that. After that, I think the next one I got with a celebrity in the title was Jeff Cape's Strongman. Did you ever play that? Involves joystick waggling as well, but it's not like a 100-meter sprint. It's like an endurance test. It's like never-ending joystick waggling. Absolutely infuriating. Featuring the world's strongest man in the early 80s. Another playground name that was a hero, Jeff Capes. And then from there, there's probably more in between. But John Madden stands out as a teenager. No idea who John Madden was. No idea whatsoever. Nor did I know anything about American football. But playing John Madden on my Amiga taught me everything I needed to know. Just this week, I revisited Michael Jackson's Moonwalker because a Japanese cartridge turned up. So I tried that on the Japanese Mega Drive. Honestly, it's a terrible game. Have you played it?
No, I played the
Moonwalker?
arcade.
It's based on the arcade on the Mega Drive. And to me, it is just a door opening simulator. You go upstairs, you open a door. There might be the child behind it that you need to rescue. There might be an enemy behind it. There might be nothing. And then you open another door and another door and another door. I didn't enjoy it. I don't know if people take that as a good game, Michael Jackson's Moonwalker. But back in the day on the Amiga, I had Moonwalker, which was a completely different game. Maybe you had it on your ST. It was like a bird's eye view.
I've never played it on any arcade.
Did have some side-scrolling sections, but most of it was top-down. I did go to the cinema to see the film, actually. That's probably why I ended up getting hold of the game. But celebrity endorsements in games, they were there for a reason. It was an easy shortcut for marketing to tap into a known quantity. It was a recognizable face on the front cover. And that Daley Thompson's cover art of him sprinting towards the Olympic rings, I think that's a really nostalgic. Yeah, Dave's doing the pose. That's a really nostalgic cover for me. Really like it. But just like movie tie-ins in games, it can cause a little bit of laziness if deadlines are involved to tie in with the events in the celebrities' lives. So, yeah, it's an interesting topic. Dave, tell us about your celebrity gaming memories. Do any stand out for you?
Well, I tried to think, is there anything I remember as being good? And there's nothing at all came out.
Doesn't have to be good. It doesn't have to be good.
Other than Michael Jackson's Moonwalker, because that's a great arcade game. But
You like it?
Yeah, I would be shocked if I found out that he had little involvement in that. I'm sure he must have been involved in it because he liked that type of thing. Remember, we covered his arcade game that was pulled just because his name went a bit south, his reputation, so they pulled his
the FMV game, yeah.
Yes, yeah. But yeah, this is a good game. Another one I can remember is Samantha Fox Strip Poker.
Of course.
That came out 2 years after. 2 years after Daley Thompson's Decathlon.
Actually, this weekend in the car park when everyone was swapping games,
she turned up.
She turned up. There was a whole box of games laid on the picnic table for people to help themselves to, and Sam Fox Strip Poker was there as a freebie.
Sam Fox was a British. Do you have glamour models outside of the UK? Is that a British only thing? Is it a euphemism we have here? Yeah, page 3. She was an adult model, but in a fairly innocent way. And she was world famous in the UK. What a stupid thing to have said, David. She was very famous in the UK, and she had a celebrity tie-in game, Samantha Fox Strip Poker, which I imagine very few people wanted to go into a shop and get seen buying. But other than that, I think I would have been too cynical to have thought a celebrity tie-in game was anything other than a celebrity tie-in game and try to avoid it. I don't think they were too common, though. We had the tsunami of film and TV tie-ins in the late 80s. And maybe they're just not my type of game because I tended not to play sports games, as my physique shows.
Plenty of sports games out there.
Yeah.
Golf games stand out. Arnold Palmer, Rick Norman. Yeah, lots of golf games came about.
But when you're talking about games in the far future or the past, if you're talking about sci-fi or fantasy type games, you're not going to get a tie-in there. Even FIFA, which is a kind of a celebrity tie-in type game because they had all the names, I'm sure I knew it was NAF from the word go.
I did look up some examples of games that I didn't play that had celebrity tie-ins, so let us know if you've tried these. Crew Ball. This is Motley Crue Pinball. Also Kiss Pinball. So there was something about pinball. Yeah, go on.
I was listening to the latest Ted Dabney Experience podcast where they interviewed Jersey Jack, who makes high-end pinball machines now, like $15,000 type things. And I believe his latest one is Elton John.
Oh, okay.
So it's a proper official tie-in with Elton John. I think 1,000 tables they make of those, and 80% of them, he said, go to private collectors, so private people wanting the best pinball experience. So yeah, that celebrity tie-in is a big thing now.
So how long before somebody pirates that and puts it on your V pinball?
Well, I didn't look to see if those kind of games have been there, but there's nothing at all that can't be done in virtual pinball that is done there. So someone could do it. It's just a question of how authentic it is, how close to the original it is.
What else did I come up with? Penn and Teller's Smoke and Mirrors. You've probably heard of this one, an unreleased Sega Mega CD game. It was a collection of mini games, but it did make its way out, so you can get hold of it to try it. But one of the mini games famously was Desert Bus, which is an 8-hour bus ride simulation designed to be as boring as possible. So there's a celebrity tie-in that would make you want to buy it. I think some years ago, somebody did do an 8-hour bus ride on it as a charity stream to raise money for charity. So something good came out of it in the end. Magic Johnson's Basketball. Loved that on my Amiga. Probably my introduction to basketball as well and the rules of basketball, just like Madden was for American football. I don't think I played a celebrity baseball game to learn about that and to sort of the trinity of American sports. I think it was just Accolades Hardball for me. And then I guess in athletics, after Daley Thompson's, it was Carl Lewis. I had an Olympic game. It must have tied in with the Barcelona Olympics, I think. When was that? Was that 90? 1990? Was it 92? It's around then sometime. 90 was the World Cup, Italia 90. 92, I think, was the Barcelona Olympics.
Yeah, they don't coincide.
Yeah. Was 88 Seoul? Trying to remember now. But yeah, Carl Lewis. So an American endorsement at that point of an athlete being sold in the UK rather than trying to find, another Daley Thompson. But of course, Carl Lewis was huge. He was a superstar. So
over 6 foot.
Over 6 foot. Huge. So yeah, those are some examples I can remember and that I turned up. We actually have a ROM for a game that was made for us here called Arcade Alex, which features me, Holly, Alex and Richard shifting arcade cabinets around a mill. So at some point we should get that in its own cabinet or a cocktail for people to try out. It's quite fun. I think it's based on Pac-Man hardware. Can't remember now. But we could run it on an emulator just to get in a cab. That'd be fun.
So what would be in this cocktail then? Which 4 spirits would signify you, Holly, Alex and Richard?
Oh, I'll be the low alcohol one. I'll be the the tonic. So yeah, unless you can think of any more, Dave, get thinking, viewers. Celebrity endorsements or cameos, they actually seem to be an integral part of many big AAA releases these days. You mentioned tie-ins with futuristic games, Dave, and you can't do that. Well, you can. Keanu Reeves in Cyberpunk, he was in there.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's what they do now. They do.
In the modern day.
They get a famous name to do the voice acting. Yeah, that's a big draw.
Yeah.
And they did it in Lands of Lore. They had Patrick Stewart to do Lands of Lore.
Yeah.
And they had for Oblivion, they had Patrick Stewart.
Yeah, Mark Hamill in Wing Commander.
Yes. Yeah.
So if we move away from just celebrities in the title,
you
can find some more examples. Maybe not as early as 1984, but come on, there's got to be one earlier than 84, earlier than Daley Thompson. Get thinking. Nicki Minaj, she appeared in a game recently, apparently, through my internet research tells me. But yeah, the gaming industry, it's a lucrative market for them because of the exposure it can give them is attractive now. It's such a big market. It's a two-way street now. But do spare a thought for the celebrities rendered in chunky pixels on 8-bit machines who were open-minded enough to give it a go 40 years ago. Although I still maintain...
Or just took the money.
Or just took the money, perhaps. But I do maintain Daley Thompson, quick shot joysticks, it would have been the perfect partnership.
Yeah. I'd like to welcome our 3 new patrons in this week. So thank you to Kevin, Edwin and Wolsey. Thank you very much for becoming twirlers. Where can people go, Neil, if they want to become a twirler and join the masses?
If they want to be as cool as Kevin, Edwin and Wolsey, they can go to patreon.com/thisweekinretro and sign up as a twirler to support the show.
We had lots of comments about the Intellivision. Lots of people do remember it. People had very little to say about the Amico or the Amico. Someone did mention that if you want to know more about that, DJ Slope has a 4-hour video deep dive into it.
4 hours.
I know. It's probably about 4 hours longer than I'm interested in doing the Amico. But lots of nice comments about the Intellivision, lots of fond memories of it. Control Alt Reese said that he says, I say Amico, you say Amico, something, Tommy Tallarico. And there is some important feedback that I'm going to work on right now.
Take this very seriously, Dave.
Trowitz9215 says Dave needs to centre the padding at the top of his headphones. So, Neil, let me know when I've got it right.
Oh, I can't actually see. You're a bit blurry. Oh, yeah. Middle, please, umpire. I think you're there.
There we go. Hope you're happy.
There's no grass on the wicket, but it seems to be centred there.
Chris has been telling us that he's gone CRT. Chris used to talk about not having CRTs, about how his LCD flat screens were fine.
Is this fake Australian Chris?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
He's went and bought 3 cheap CRTs and they all work. He's put the pictures in Discord and it seems that that's him CRT happy now. Good. I don't think he expected all 3 to work. I think he thought I'll get 3 and maybe I'll get a good one out of it, but now he's got 3.
Well done, Chris. Briefs. What's in your briefs this week?
42 Nobody 42 tells us that a Wata graded, boo, Wata, boo, a Wata graded prototype Star Wars NES cartridge is freed from, it's not carbonite, but plastic prison, and then dumped, as in the ROMs were dumped. So Wata grading ends up sealing games into a tomb where it costs you a great deal of money, effectively, to open it up. So you don't open it up. So people have bought this and then opened it up to dump the previously undumped ROMs from the prototype version of Star Wars NES, which I think it turns out were not greatly different from the retail version. But they go free from its prison and they do some fun stuff like have a drink out of the empty carton.
They did the right thing. That's as it should. Superfly82, Superfly, says a couple of months ago, pallets of hand-cranked Palm handheld consoles. What are they called? Is it the Playdate, isn't it? The Playdate.
Yes, Playdate.
I've had to go on one. It really does work. Oh, really cool games on them.
How long do you need to wind to have a game?
You don't wind to play the game. I think, well, you can wind to charge it, can you? I don't know, but you're winding in the game as well. It's part of the controller. It's not just to charge it. So it's
not just a waggle the joystick. You have to wind to get Daley Thompson to go.
Yeah, wind Daley Thompson up. Yeah. So a couple of months ago, loads of them were stolen, and suddenly they've turned up again in Las Vegas dumps outside a random restaurant. So they have been found.
Pajako tells us that the race is on to save a valuable resource. Apparently, Computer Trade Weekly, which is a UK magazine, not all of it exists in archives, so there's now a rush to try and find it in people's storages if they have the issues that are missing. So have a check out if you do have them.
I've been reading New Computer Express from the 80s and early 90s. I think it was a weekly magazine, just like Pixel Addict. And it's really an interesting source of news, Lots of stories that I don't see in other magazines anywhere else. So I'm really enjoying diving into them.
That would be our equivalent then, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Paul, a.k.a. Hermsky, says Level Tap, which was a Liverpool esports bar and arcade launched in April 2023, has sadly come to an end. Now, is this related to the auctions that we saw come up, Dave?
Yes, I think there's an auction for their stuff, yeah.
Because somehow, I think there was a BBC News item, or there was another news channel which said, arcade closes, everything up for auction. And I followed the auction, and it was widescreen, flat screen, modern arcades. It wasn't arcade.
Let's not knock widescreen, flat screen in arcade settings. No. They're obviously wrong for the mill, for the cave, and for the archive. But if you're building something in a town centre and it's going to be full on a Friday and Saturday night and people won't use them, and through the rest of the week you want people to come in to do it, the flat screen's the right thing for it.
Yeah, I mean, given this was an esports bar, I think that's fine. It's modern gaming, and here's a way you can access retro games. Fine.
Yeah. Deadlock Era lets us know that Evercade are making a mini arcade machine that's compatible with their cartridges. So Evercade, if you're not aware, make this well-regarded handheld machine that uses a cartridge. It's a compromise between the old ways of having one game in one cartridge and the new way of having everything on an SD card. Evercade cartridges usually have about 10 games on them. Although not exclusively, but they've made a little arcade machine that you can now plug the cartridges in and play it on your desktop instead.
Does that mean we finally got the Dizzy arcade we always wanted? Because there's the Evercade Dizzy pack.
Let's say yes.
Yes,
I don't know that's the case, but let's say yes. I don't see why not.
Treasure Island Dizzy in an arcade. Perfect. Yeah. Crumpy posted a story released from the BBC archives this week. It was a segment of The Computer Programme, which talks about how much data these modern things computers can store. And I really did enjoy watching this, especially the segment where they get to the Laserdisc. I think they were using it with the BBC Master. It's kind of nearly but not quite talking about the Doomsday Project and how you can search, was it 3,000 books or something like that? They said, and then they had videos, but it was very much a text interface. So you were reading a text article in like the teletext font, and then you would type video and press enter, and a video would play. It was very old school, but magical when the video plays off of the Laserdisc. Yeah.
It's amazing when you look back at 1982 at what storage was then and how they thought it's amazing what you can fit into this tiny thing. And then we can fit 1 million of it into something the size of a thumbnail now.
I always remember at one point how many copies of the Bible you could store on a thing was like the unit of measurement, wasn't it? Yeah. It was like double-decker buses or football pitches. It was how many Bibles can you store on a CD?
An area the size of Wales, that type of measurement.
Yes.
Yeah. And from Pajako, sadly, passed of pancreatic cancer. Within a month of being diagnosed, video game music legend Jeff Fallon has passed away. His brother Tim let the world know, and together with his brother Tim, he was responsible for lots of great music from the 80s and 90s. I know most of it from the C64, but they also did consoles too, so that's very sad.
Yeah, great music. Musically, but also technically, they really did push the limits of what the systems and the consoles could do. Things like Solstice on the NES, wonderful sounding tunes. Thoughts with the Fallon family.
Yeah, there is loads and loads more. In fact, probably there's more that we haven't talked about than there is that we did talk about this week. There's just so much to look through there. The whole point of this enterprise that we're doing is to create a place to go and look at what's there every week. So please do use that resource if you've got some time to waste, if you're sitting on the bog, if you've got time to kill at work, if you're on the train, have a browse through and see what takes your fancy and submit things to us. Neil, did you know that Wizardry is a console game?
Well, Dave, I know that the FM Towns got it, and there is such thing as the FM Towns Marty. So, yes, or maybe the Apple Pippin. Am I being too smart here? Too smug?
Yeah, but so am I. So I deserve it. In fact, it's only notable because it inspired console games.
Really? Probably deserves a bit more credit than that.
Yeah. Well, that's what today's submission says. And I think, Christ of why don't you knew what they were doing when they were submitting this. They put it in quotes to make sure it's not seen as their opinion. It's an article on Polygon by Mike Wickwerter, which I can only assume is too young to know better.
So if I put anything in quotes when I say it to you, Dave, I'm not responsible for what's within those quotes, am I?
Yeah, I think that's the idea with doing it.
Right. So if you want to leave any comments on this week's episode for Dave, just pop them in quotes and fill your boots.
The actual title of it is The RPG That Inspired Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest and Demon Souls is now more playable than ever. And that it did slightly annoy me there. Anyone who listens to this show knows that I'm not a console gamer. and I try not to be closed-minded about things, but I do notice that console people sometimes are just unaware that gaming started before the Nintendo Entertainment System. They just don't seem to know about the stuff that happened before it. And this is an article on Polygon by Mike McWhirter, who initially I could only assume is too young to know better, but I think he does save himself. It's intentional. So I'm not going to go down the road of saying that the entire British software history pre-32-bit is ignored. Not today, I won't. But I will say for a lot of people, their idea of an RPG is formed entirely from console games, starting with things like Zelda and Final Fantasy, before moving on to Mass Effect, Skyrim, etc., which of course are also available on PC. But that is, of course, not where RPG games started, and this is where I'm being more than a little bit unfair to Mike McWhirter, who does know what he's talking about, because that's the kind of the point of this article. So, apologies for my pronunciation on the following names as I muddle through them. Hidetaka Miyazaki, the creator of Dark Souls series, talked about which game to him Dark Souls is kind of based on, and it wasn't Final Fantasy, it was Wizardry. And in fact, Mike goes on to say that Final Fantasy creator Hironobu Sakaguchi, Dragon Quest creator Yuji Horii, and Secret of Mana game director Koichi Ishii all say the same thing. They talk about the early computer role-playing games, Wizardry and the U word. Shall we go a whole episode without saying the U word, Neil?
I think we can do it, Dave. I think we can do it.
But the reason for this article being written is that Wizardry, proving grounds of the Mad Overlord, that's the first in the long series of Wizardry, which I have the whole archives here, which came with a very similar cover to this, with the dragon, the snake-like dragon on the front, has been remade. And like all RPGs, it starts on the Apple II, and it started in 1981, a very, very long time ago. And I'm afraid the original gameplay really does show that. It's great for the time.
It was Surtech, was it?
Yes.
Yeah, the
Surtech and then Interplay. Yeah.
Surtech, yeah.
It's quite dated. It's a split-screen affair with your character stats in one place, your decisions on another, and a picture of the 3D view of the dungeon changing to the monsters that you're fighting on another. But it's quite similar to the U-Word game, which came out as a Calabeth. We can say that without triggering it. A Calabeth in 1980, the year before, and that split-screen format continued right up to, and in fact beyond, Dungeon Master in 1987. But I think when Dungeon Master came out, it probably finally showed that the split-screen RPG it is perhaps a bit dated now. So I didn't play Wizardry. It was Bard's Tale for me, but it's a very similar style of game. And as for the remaster, well, it's done by Digital Eclipse, so that's a sign of quality. And if you look carefully, you can see it is the same. It is the same game format, turn-based, etc., but they've made it look much nicer, and they've added lots and lots of quality of life features, things like auto mapping, etc. And you've got a choice about how kind it is to you now compared to what it was in 1981. But the presentation is what they've really done well with. And I think there's a lot to be said for doing this. The truth is that what you could do in 1981 with a computer role-playing game hasn't aged all that well. And I don't think these games could be picked up now and played entirely objectively. I don't think someone who could just pick up one of these games with no link to it and just play it for enjoyment, I don't think so. I think you'd need some kind of reason to put yourself through it. Although, to their credit, these games are not as bogged down as modern games. You can get in and start playing them a bit easier. Neil, have you ever played Wizardry, and do you think you might now?
Wow. Lots to unpack there. Calabeth, actually, interestingly, 1980 is when it was published in a box nicely, but it was in the summer of 79 that Garriott was selling it in Ziploc bags in his little computer shop. So it does actually go all the way back to the 70s, which is just mind-blowing, really, isn't
And
it?
in fact, it's D&D. I don't know if it's D&D 28 or which number it was, but this is an iteration of his games that were just called D&D, which were trying to get Dungeons and Dragons onto the computer. So it was an iteration of that. So he'd been going at this for a lot longer.
On a teletype of all things, before even an Apple II. So Wizardry, though, specifically, I didn't dip into Wizardry until Wizardry 7, Crusaders of the Dark Savant. I was attracted to it by the screenshots of that one. That was 1992. And I did give it a spin when I eventually got a PC, I mean, a few years after its release, really. Didn't make a huge impression on me at the time, but then I wasn't immersed in the series, so I couldn't tell you if it was a good installment for the series or if it was an outlier or not. I don't know. So outside of that, no. I have looked at the remaster. I'm all for remasters of things like this, whether it be a new game remasters, whether it be an engine that takes the old assets and just presents them in a modern way, a higher resolution with updated controls to make it more convenient. I love all of this stuff. So looking at the remaster of this one, it did remind me a little bit of the Colossal Cave remake that we saw come out a couple of years ago. It looks good. It's 3D. It's, it's dungeon crawler, but not flick screen like the old ones. But it doesn't look like big budget stuff. It doesn't look bad. It just looks sort of somewhere in the middle. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, I think that makes sense. But I did dip into the reviews because graphics aren't everything. The reviews are very positive on the whole on Steam, both it seems from new players and old players of the original series. What stood out is people are saying it's no walk in the park, and that's good because if I'm spending £29.50, it is on Steam. If I'm spending that on a game, I want it to be tough as old boots. I want it to be accessible, but I want it to be tough. I want a challenge, so that's good to hear. There are just a few mentions of bugs in the reviews, so I might hold off a little bit, Dave, before pulling the trigger just to let things get ironed out. It's certainly doesn't seem to be early access, just a few little bugs to iron out. And I like that they've gone back to the first game because to me that says I don't need any prior knowledge. I can go from the start. I can pick up the lore. I would love to have a map. I would love to have some trinkets and things to go with it. But as a dungeon crawler, I guess you draw it yourself, or in the game. I think in the game, in the screenshots, it kind of automatically does it for you.
Yeah, so that the auto map is an option.
Yeah,
if you want it to be an option. I've actually got the manual here for the first 7 games, so I'll have something on there for me if I did it. But yeah, it does add an auto map. I haven't got this. I have so much on my plate just now. I'm not ready to take on a new RPG, but I think I eventually will. The Bard's Tale got a remake a few years ago, and it wasn't anything like the scale of this remake. But even then, they made it more accessible, and I quite enjoyed it. I'm very confident this might be the way that I finally play Wizardry 1, because I just don't think there's that much chance I'll go back and play the original Wizardry 1 as it stands just now. I never played it back in the day. I didn't have a computer when it came out.
Yeah, it makes me think of all the times people say to me, which Ultima should I play?
Oh.
Which Ultima, I've done it twice now, should I play in the series? And it's really hard to recommend one because they're not, it's a dated experience. They're not going to get the impact that we had whenever we played. Dave's holding up his 2 fingers. So you think Ultima 2. 3. Oh, you're counting how many times I say it. Got you. Okay. I won't say it again. So generally my advice is to use the modern Exalt engine and go for 7. Just to make it accessible and enjoyable. But it's heart-wrenching because they're games that are so close to your heart, and you can't honestly recommend them to people knowing that they'll get the same experience as you did, and it will be the same for hardcore Wizardry fans as well. So maybe this is the way. Yeah.
Maybe they could do it for, I'm going to say it, if you get 3, I get 1. Maybe they could do it for Ultima. Have a look if you want to do this, and let us know if you do try it. Let us know if you enjoy it. But Wizardry is now accessible again.
Time now for our community question of the week, which Dave will take out of contest mode for me while I tell you every week, pinned to our subreddit at reddit.com/r/this week in retro is our question of the week. We love seeing your answers underneath that question. We generally read out the top 3 and skim out a few others. When we say the top 3, you get to upvote, thumbs up and thumbs down each other's answers. Once it's out of contest mode, they go into order. And I will read the first answer. No, I'll read the question so you know what the hell we're talking about. Shall I do that?
That's a good idea, Neil.
Top-down races. Which is your favourite and why? In addition, did any of you play Sprint 8? What was it like racing 7 of your friends? What was it like to have 7 friends? Must have been nice. This was all based on our discussion of Neo Sprint, the new version of the Sprint series from Atari. And Fuskit has the top answer. Is that the same on your screen, Dave?
Yes.
And he says, Micro Machines on the Amiga. The goofy animations of the characters. Anyone else think that Cherry looks like Anthea Turner? Yeah, I know the one you mean, actually. The goofy animations when they win or lose and gradually knocking them out one by one, or the head-to-head against a friend or sibling. Possibly the most fun you can have on 4 wheels and a single disc on the Amiga. Obviously, Micro Machines out on other platforms, including the Mega Drive, where it had 2 additional joypad ports in the cartridge itself. So you could, that was your multi-tap. You could play 4-player Micro Machines. Brilliant game. I think on some of them as well, maybe the Super Nintendo, maybe the Mega Drive as well, you could share a joypad. So it automatically accelerated, and on one joypad, you had left and right for one player, left and right for the other player, and you had to share a joypad. It all added to the fun. Yeah. So, good shout.
We've got a problem, Neil.
Go on.
The top 3 answers this week are all Micro Machines.
Oh, wow. Okay, so that's DJ Chris Fury, who talks about...
he talks about it on the Amiga. He says spent many hours playing it. Very satisfying when you drove around the track and left them off screen to win a point. He said it was annoying when they did it to you. He does also go on to mention I have fond memories of Iron Man Stewart's Super Off-Road also on the Amiga, which was also great, but I think I enjoyed the Paradox Cracktro, which made me laugh, so maybe that had something to do with it.
Oh, God. Yeah, he's put a link there. Not safe for work, but as soon as I clicked it, I remembered it. Yes, it involves a cherub and a devil. You'll know what I'm talking about. If you know, you know. Pajako6502 also... Micro Machines, this time on the Mega Drive. Oh, he talks about the J-Cart with the 2 additional controllers. Sorry, I ruined your thunder there, Paul. Sitting around 4 of us playing it was a riot. Yeah. So I think we'll lump those together as one answer, and we'll do a couple more. So do you want to take the next one, Dave?
Yeah. So Stewpot Seb says, BMX Simulator on the Spectrum. It was the first pocket money game that I spent a lot of time on. Codemasters did a great job selling the game with bright, gaudy box art, and the simple 2-player action didn't disappoint. My mate had it on the C64 too, and it was even better. Hours spent trying to beat each other, great times.
It was great fun. I bought my copy for my Amstrad from the video rental store on my BMX, and then I rode my BMX home and played BMX Simulator. Great memories. The BMXs are just... I think 3 pixels. They're just a line, aren't they, in the game? But that's all you needed, and there were dirt tracks in it. It was Atari Sprint with BMXs, basically. Tungsten Orchid says, I guess it has to be skid marks and super skid marks. Other than that, I really didn't feel drawn towards top-down races. One I didn't mention was Slicks and Slides, Slicks and Slide, I think it is, on the PC. I really enjoyed that. Very simple graphics for when it came out, but just pure gameplay, great fun.
I watched the video last night from Joy of Sticks, and it was a tier list of Atari ST top-down racers. So it was a bit of a coincidence, a bit of a happy coincidence talking about this. And what do you think came top, Neil?
I'm going to go with... Well, it's Atari ST top-down race. Super Sprint?
No, Supercars 2.
Supercars 2. Well, it's funny you should say that because Antiques for Geeks very confidently says the correct answer is Supercars 2. But he says on the Amiga.
I remember you saying that is better on the ST, Neil.
Did I say that?
Yeah, you said it felt more responsive on the ST.
Yeah, when I was comparing them, it was actually nicer on the ST. Yeah, a bit smoother. Yeah. I'll give you that.
They're great games. They're great games. But yeah, there's lots of good games there. The ones we expect to see, though, I don't think there's anything that I don't think I saw a game that. Oh, here's one. I had an Acorn Electron, so this don't have a Scooby. Says who has a Scooby here. I had an Acorn Electron and spent many hours playing Stock Car from Microplayer as a young 10-year-old at the time. The graphics weren't amazing, and it's probably seen as rubbish now, but I had seen Sprint in the arcades, and this was the closest I could get, and it holds a lot of nostalgia.
Ralph Wants It and Rowan Forrest both mentioned that they did play Sprint 2, the black and white arcade, at UK Seaside Resorts, and is one mentioned? Oh no, one in the UK and one at a holiday resort in Sweden played Sprint 2. So there are, but no mentions of Sprint 8 anywhere. Super Sprint on the ST from Salem. Lots of Micro Machines, Savage Tech, Snoo Panda, ProTech, Championship Sprint on the C64. Happy Coding. Shout out to the underrated Mashed on the PlayStation 2. Now that seems quite late for a top-down racer. But then saying that, you've only got to think about the first Grand Theft Auto. It was a scrolling top-down racer at times, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, racers are stretch, but everything else is that. Yeah,
loads of answers. Every week we're getting more and more answers to these questions. So thank you everyone for participating. Rally X mentioned there, not quite a racer, definitely a top-down car game. Yeah, I've never really clicked with Rally X. Have you played it on the arcade?
No. I should tell people as well, just as you're mentioning that there, these answers aren't just for us to see. Everyone can see these answers.
Yeah.
If you go to the subreddit, to the question of the week answers, you can see what everyone else has put. It's quite an interesting read.
Yeah. So that brings us to this week's question of the week that you can participate in, and it's, what's your favourite game with a celebrity in it? Now, it's highly likely we won't have heard of the celebrity. Don't worry about that. In fact, the more obscure, the better. Ideally, the celebrity's name is in the title of the game, but don't worry if not. We will allow it if celebrities feature heavily in the game, even if it's not named after them.
Yeah.
That's our question.
If the celebrity has to be in the name, then it would end up being a really short list of submissions. So any celebrity in the game.
Pippa Funnel's show jumping simulator. There's one for you.
Pippa Funnel. I thought that was going to be that sounded a bit more down the road of strip poker.
No. Although I think we may get a few of those answers as well.
Yeah.
Thank you, as always, everyone, for taking the time to listen. Hope you've enjoyed this week's show. Reddit.com/r/This Week in Retro to participate. Patreon.com/This Week in Retro. Do we have any more of our AMA to do for the patrons?
We've got one more to do, Neil.
So we're doing some additional videos over there on Patreon just to give you some extra insights. Well, I say they're insights. You can literally ask us anything. So some are insights, some are just bizarre, but it's a lovely conversation we're having and sharing with you over there. Long may it continue. Thank you, as always, for watching. And Dave, are you going to give us a wave?
Yeah.
We'll see you next week. He's waving. Bye-bye.
Bye.
This Week in Retro was presented by Neil from RMC The Cave and Dave. It was produced by me, Duncan Styles. The podcast version of the show is available through your favourite podcaster, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And the video version is available on the This Week in Retro YouTube channel.
Join our community subreddit at r/This Week in Retro to suggest and vote on the stories we cover on the show. If you watch This Week in Retro on YouTube, please give us a like and subscribe to help us reach new viewers.
If you enjoy our show and would like to support it, then please check out the link to our Patreon page in the show notes or description. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time for more up-to-date news for Out of Date Tech.